Hey guys, tonight we ride across the endless steppe, wind in your face, dust in your teeth, and nothing but thousands of miles of Mongol territory ahead. You're one of the fresh recruits in the 13th century Yam system, the elite courier network of the Mongol Empire. You've got a half-trained horse, a carved wooden message tablet you don't entirely understand, and about 6 hours of sleep spread thin across 3 frigid nights. The sun's already dipping below the horizon, and guess what? You don't have a tent. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing all the corners of the world we fall asleep together in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive at your first relay station, though station might be generous. It's more like a lonely wooden hut clinging to the edge of nowhere, guarded by 2 horses, a pile of firewood, and a man who looks like he's been chewing on bark since autumn. He gestures you off your mount, offers a cracked cup of fermented mare's milk, and vanishes into the dark. There is no tent. There is no spare bedroll. There is, however, a particularly judgmental goat who seems to have appointed itself the camp supervisor. You try to sit, but the ground's so cold and firm it might as well be carved from punishment itself. A breeze picks up, slicing through your coat like you offended the wind personally. You wrap yourself tighter, pressing your knees to your chest, muttering that tomorrow, surely, has to be warmer. The wind responds by stealing your hat. Mainstream historical fact: the Mongol Yam system was one of the most advanced postal networks of the medieval world. Stations like this were spaced roughly every 25 to 30 miles, allowing riders to change horses and keep messages moving with astonishing speed, up to 200 miles per day in ideal conditions. Quirky tidbit? The Mongols often used dried dung for campfire fuel, which meant your stew might taste faintly of yesterday's yak. Warmth came at a price. You do your best to start a small fire with the kindling you've got, but your fingers are too stiff, and your flint strikes sound more like sad hiccups than sparks. You finally get something going and lean in, practically inhaling smoke in an effort to feel anything. Historians still argue whether these early Yam stops were meant for any comfort or strictly function, but judging by the lack of walls, beds, or human dignity, you're leaning hard towards strictly function. The stars above are extraordinary, so bright they look fake, as if someone painted them on. You try to find constellations, but it's hard to focus when your toes are plotting mutiny. The night deepens. Your horse, tied a few feet away, whinnies softly in its sleep. Must be nice, you think, to have fur and 4 legs and no sense of bureaucracy. You wake up approximately 4 to 6 times throughout the night, alternating between shivering and hallucinating conversations with a stone that may or may not be judging your life choices. Around 3 a.m., frost blooms across your boots like tiny, smug flowers. You consider curling inside the saddle blanket, but then remember the lice warning. You do it anyway. At some point, the stars start to fade. The eastern sky tinges violet. You can smell the first breath of morning on the wind, cold, sharp, a little dusty, like it's been blowing over centuries of secrets. The fire is ash. Your body feels like a sack of undercooked bread. You survived the night. Barely. Now all you have to do is get on a new horse, decipher your next destination based on a memory of landmarks you haven't seen yet, and not freeze, faint, or fall off anything for at least another 200 miles. Easy. You're back in the saddle, or rather, on top of a medieval Mongolian saddle, which is basically a wooden triangle pretending to be furniture. No padding, no kindness, and certainly no consideration for your posterior. The horse snorts beneath you, clearly sensing that you are not one of the elite Yam riders bred for this life. You're more like a confused tourist in a horse costume. The route today is mercifully flat. The endless grasslands roll like a green ocean around you, stretching in every direction. The air smells faintly of sage and sweat. You'd admire the view more if you weren't currently experiencing something historians delicately refer to as saddle fatigue. You, however, would describe it less academically. Your but has declared independence. Mongol messengers were expected to cover enormous distances in record time. With relay stations set every 25 to 30 miles, couriers changed horses frequently to maintain top speed. This system, called the yam, was the beating heart of Mongol communication, built under Genghis Khan himself. Riders had to be quick, tough, and skilled in the saddle. Unfortunately, you are none of those things. You've already had to switch horses twice. The first one got tired of your lopsided riding and tried to scrape you off against a tree. The second had what you'd politely call emotional issues. The third horse, your current partner, appears to tolerate you, but only just. It keeps glancing back like it's debating whether you're edible in an emergency. Somewhere around midday, your thighs stop functioning. They're not sore, they've simply opted out of the day's agenda. You attempt to shift your weight and are met with the unique agony of a bone-onward experience that no modern ergonomic expert could have foreseen. Quirky tidbit: to reduce chafing, veteran messengers sometimes rode standing in the stirrups for hours at a time, using leg strength alone to balance. You attempt this briefly and almost dismount via a front flip. You pull over at the next relay, which is little more than a lean-to and a grumpy teenager guarding a fresh horse. He doesn't say anything, just hands you a bowl of something white and vaguely lumpy. You stare at it with polite horror. "It's Iraq," he says flatly. "Good for energy." You take a sip. It's fermented mare's milk, sour, frothy, with notes of despair and unexpected carbonation. The aftertaste suggests both yogurt and heartbreak. But, historically speaking, it was a major part of the Mongol diet, especially for people on the move. High in fat, slightly alcoholic, and weirdly filling. You thank him, lie to his face about how much you loved it, and swing your aching legs back over yet another horse. Historians still argue whether early couriers received consistent training or were mostly chosen by necessity and proximity. Some records suggest they were elite soldiers, others hint that they were just the most expendable guy who could hold onto reins. Either way, you're definitely not ready for the next 100 miles. You ride on, but protesting with every trot. The sun's high now, baking the back of your neck. Your water skin tastes faintly of sheep wool, and you suspect your left boot is slowly filling with sweat. Not dramatically, just enough to know it's plotting something. As the miles stretch, you begin to understand what endurance really means, not just physical, but mental. The monotony is endless. You start naming rocks. You start arguing with grass. At one point, you hum a song from your childhood and forget the lyrics halfway through, so you invent new ones about saddle sores and existential dread. Your horse, admirably stoic, continues forward. And despite it all, despite the aches, the irag, and the increasing likelihood that your thighs will never forgive you, there's something oddly calming about this brutal rhythm. The wind sings past your ears. The landscape doesn't change, but it's beautiful in its stubbornness. And there's no distraction out here, no noise, no obligation, just you, the road, and the relentless thud of hooves on hardened soil. Until, of course, you shift wrong, wince audibly, and remember why you probably won't survive this. Not city hungry, where you start browsing menus in your head or sigh longingly at delivery apps. No, you're medieval Mongol steppe hungry, a dull, persistent ache that feels less like an appetite and more like your stomach writing angry poetry. At the next relay station, a wiry man with wind-burned cheeks hands you dinner with the enthusiasm of someone who's seen too many complaints. It's the same as last night. Fermented mare's milk and a small leather pouch of dried curds that could double as dice. They are called arul, rock-hard dairy snacks that the Mongols loved and your teeth now fear. There's also a slice of boiled mutton. Maybe. It might be goat. Possibly both. It's hard to say. Either way, it's gray, stringy, and has that distinct boiled in the same pot as someone's sock aroma. You sit cross-legged, if you can call what your stiff legs are doing sitting, and stare at your dinner. A fly buzzes near the meat and decides it's not worth it. You eat anyway. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol diet was built around practicality, preservation, and fat. With little access to fresh vegetables and no time for elaborate cooking, couriers relied on high-calorie, shelf-stable foods. Fermented dairy, ayrag, arul, yogurt, and dried cheese was everywhere. And meat was either boiled endlessly or dried to last through long rides. You chew the curd slowly, like it's a riddle. At least it's quiet. The fire crackles nearby. Somewhere out on the steppe, a dog howls. A breeze rattles the grass in long sighs. You close your eyes, trying to trick your brain into believing this is cozy. Then the man at the station casually mentions that the next stretch has been a little tricky lately. You ask why, and he shrugs. Bandits. Or wolves. Maybe ghosts. He chuckles like this is deeply funny. You ask, how tricky? He says, well, the last rider made it through fine, except he dropped the tablet in the river. We think. Or maybe he just wanted to disappear. Quirky tidbit. In the colder months, couriers sometimes buried emergency cheese in the ground near relay points, just in case food ran out. These cheese caches were considered a perfectly rational survival tactic. You now wish very much that this station had one. Historians still argue whether Yam station food quality varied by region or rank. Some records praise the hearty meals served to high-status messengers, while others describe riders collapsing from hunger during long hauls. Judging by your meal tonight, you're definitely not in the top tax bracket. After eating, you try to clean your wooden bowl with snow, because water is scarce and your standards are disintegrating. You contemplate licking the salt from your own hand. You do it. You regret it. Your host offers you more fermented milk. You accept. You hate yourself. Night is falling fast, and with it comes the return of your old friend, the cold. You dig into your stole bag for anything resembling a blanket and find something that could technically be called a cloak, if you were being generous and lying. You roll into a tight ball near the fire, knees up, eyes barely open, hoping that sleep comes before the inevitable stomach gurgles from drinking dairy while terrified. The stars come out. One by one. You try to forget your stomach and instead focus on the sound of horses breathing, the faint rustle of wind through coarse grasses, and the now familiar creak of your spine settling into the earth like an ancient door. Tomorrow, you'll ride again. Tomorrow, you'll enjoy another dairy-forward dining experience. But tonight, at least you're not the one who dropped the tablet in the river. Probably. You're moving before the sun's even decided it's worth rising. The sky's a bruise-colored smear above the horizon, and everything is coated in a crunchy film of frost, including you. You mount up with all the grace of a haunted marionette, your joints sounding like old door hinges. Today's route takes you through low, winding valleys where the fog settles thick and stubborn. It clings to your eyelashes, curls around your throat, and muffles sound until you feel like you're riding through a dream. Or a bad weather report. Your current horse, number 7, you think, though you may have hallucinated one, is a shaggy beast named something that translates to not that one. Its stride is surprisingly smooth, and for a brief moment, you entertain the dangerous hope that today might be easier. It is not. An hour in, you realize your saddle's shifted left, your right boot is soaked from a mysterious puddle, and your leather reins are starting to fray. You attempt to fix the saddle mid-ride and end up half sideways like a very confused acrobat. Your horse sighs audibly, as if filing a complaint with the Union of Long-Suffering Steeds. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol saddles were high-fronted and high-backed, designed for both endurance and warfare. They allowed riders to shoot arrows in nearly any direction, even backward, without losing balance. Unfortunately, they were made of wood, leather, and whatever revenge feels like. You finally dismount in a clearing where your map, or rather, the series of ink blots on bark you've been calling a map, says there should be a landmark. There's supposed to be a sacred stone pile called an ovu, used to mark spiritual and geographical crossroads. You see a pile of rocks. You circle it. No inscriptions. No offerings. Just rocks and a bird that gives you major side-eye. Quirky tidbit. Travelers on the steppe often added a stone to the ovu and circled it clockwise 3 times for protection. You do this, but the bird still looks unimpressed. Historians still argue whether these ovu piles were strictly religious or had deeper political meaning. Some believe they doubled as border markers and watch points. You believe you're now very dizzy. Back on the road, the fog begins to lift, revealing a glimmering river threading through the hills. It's wider than you expected, too wide to cross easily. There's no bridge. Of course there's no bridge. You ride upstream, hoping to find a narrower crossing. You find instead, mud. Deep, clinging, soul-stealing mud. Your horse sinks halfway to the knees and lets out a sound that translates roughly to, "I hate you." You dismount and lead it slowly, boots suctioning into the muck. With each step, you regret every decision that led to this moment. You regret the cheese. You regret the irag. You regret trusting the bird. Your foot slips, your left leg disappears into the riverbank, and you emerge looking like you lost a slap fight with a swamp. You try to laugh. It sounds like crying with extra steps. Eventually, you find a place shallow enough to ford. You step into the icy water and instantly forget what toes are. Your horse refuses to move. You plead. You bribe. You yell, very softly, because shouting on the step just makes you sound lonely. Finally, it relents, and together you splash across, shivering, steaming, and smelling faintly of wet regret. You climb the far bank and spot the distant roof of the next yam station. It's another low wooden structure, this one with a goat perched on the roof like it owns the mortgage. A hunched figure waves from the doorway, holding what you pray is hot soup. You made it. Mostly. The soup is not soup. It is, technically, a hot liquid. It is also, less technically, a boiled mystery. You clutch the wooden bowl with both hands, letting the steam thaw your fingers while you try not to think too hard about what may or may not be floating in it. Some kind of root? Maybe tendon? Maybe both. Possibly bark. The woman who served it watches you expectantly, so you smile and sip. It's salty. It's sour. It's effective. You thank her, sincerely. In this moment, anything hot is a blessing. Inside the relay hut, the air is smoky and warm, thick with the smell of wool and horse sweat. 3 other couriers huddle near the hearth, trading half-muttered stories and chewing something suspiciously crunchy. You nod hello, but conversation is minimal, partly due to exhaustion, partly because everyone's mouths are full of preserved yak bits. You take your place on a woven mat in the corner. There's no bed, of course. Beds are for people who aren't crisscrossing an empire. You lie down, curled like a comma, your breath slowing as the fire crackles and the others snore gently into the hay. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol relay stations were spaced out to keep couriers moving as efficiently as possible, sometimes no more than 25 miles apart. The yam system was a logistical marvel. Messages could travel thousands of miles across steppe, mountain, and desert with astonishing speed. But the trade-off was this: comfort wasn't even a consideration. These huts were made to keep you alive. That was it. You fall asleep for what feels like 6 minutes. You're woken by a tap on your foot. It's still dark. Time to ride again. You stagger up, chew a cold scrap of dried meat that could easily be a piece of your boot, and trudge out into the frosty morning. Your next horse is waiting, taller, sleeker, and eyeing you like it's reading your resume. You mount up, trying to channel your inner Genghis. You mostly channel your inner Cramp. The terrain changes as you ride east. Hills now, and narrow ridges where you cling to the saddle and silently recite whatever you remember from childhood cartoons about just breathe and look forward. Below, the wind carves through valleys like it's searching for something it lost. Suddenly, you hear a whistle. You freeze. Another whistle answers it. You glance around. No trees, no cover, just rock and brush and sky. You nudge your horse into motion, trying not to look like prey. The horse knows. It picks up speed without needing to be told. Quirky tidbit: Mongol couriers often carried a small bow and quiver for protection, but not much else. The assumption was that speed, secrecy, and the vastness of the steppe were defense enough. You, however, are carrying a wooden tablet in a goat hide pouch, a knife the size of a butter spreader, and your last nerve. You race down the ridge, hooves clattering against stone, and feel a wild surge of adrenaline followed quickly by an equally wild cramp in your lower back. You are not built for this. You are built for ergonomic chairs and online shopping. But somehow, you make it to the riverbed below. You splash across, not even caring about your socks anymore, and don't stop until you see smoke, human smoke, curling from a distant chimney. You slow the horse. You breathe. Historians still argue whether bandits were truly a constant threat along the yam routes or more of an occasional nuisance exaggerated by legend. But the stories persist. Travelers vanishing, relay stations burned, mysterious riders in the fog. You decide you're fine with not knowing. You arrive at the station shaking, soaked, but intact. A man with one eyebrow and no visible enthusiasm hands you a dry cloak. You trade him the pouch with the tablet. He doesn't check it, just nods, ties it to his own saddle, and sets off without a word. That's the job. No applause. No welcome party. Just miles, meals, and mud. You're given the corner mat again. This one has less straw. You lie down anyway, mind still racing. Outside, the wind howls through the cracks in the walls. You pull the cloak tighter and close your eyes. You don't sleep, exactly. You wait. By now, the ache in your legs feels personal. It's not just soreness, it's the kind of deep, marrow-level fatigue that makes you question your entire life. Your hips feel like they've been in a polite disagreement with the saddle for several days, and your spine? Your spine has filed a formal complaint. In triplicate. But you mount up anyway. Because that's the job. The wind is stronger today, sharp enough to bite through wool. You pull your hood tighter and press forward. This part of the steppe is open, empty, endless. You can ride for hours and see nothing but grass, sky, and the occasional marmot standing dramatically on a rock like it's judging your posture. Your thoughts begin to drift, lulled by the rhythm of hooves and the endless sameness of the horizon. You think about your pack. You think about dried cheese. You try not to think about the fact that you haven't had a proper bath in, how long has it been? You smell like ambition, failure, and wet leather. Then you spot it, a black dot on the horizon. It's moving. Another rider, maybe. Or, no, not a rider. It's a cart. And it's stuck. You approach cautiously, one hand on your sad little knife. As you get closer, you see two people, one trying to lift a wheel from a muddy rut, the other waving at you like a half-drowned flag. You pull up. They're traders, it turns out. The cart is full of lacquered bowls, silk bolts, and something that smells suspiciously like fermented fish. One of them speaks enough Mongolian to ask if you'll help push. You consider refusing. Then you see the look in their eyes, exhausted, hopeful, halfway to despair. You sigh. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol couriers were sometimes pressed into service beyond delivery, helping travelers, relaying news of raids, or even carrying sick villagers to safety. The yam was not just a mail route, It was a lifeline through an otherwise unforgiving wilderness. You tie your horse to the cart and wade into the mud. It grabs your boots like an old grudge. The traders count to 3 and you all heave, and the cart moves. About 2 inches. You try again. This time it jolts free, lurching forward just enough to soak you in a majestic splash of earth-flavored water. You are now 60% mud. The traders thank you. They offer a bowl of something that might be pickled cucumber or might be snake. You accept it. It's cold, vinegary, and oddly satisfying. You mount up again, heavier, wetter, but feeling vaguely heroic. A marmot watches from the hilltop, unimpressed. Quirky tidbit: steppe couriers sometimes carried small handbells to announce their approach, especially when nearing a station or hoping to avoid being mistaken for bandits. You don't have a bell, so you settle for humming loudly when the wind picks up. As the sun sets, the landscape changes once again. The grass thins, giving way to rocky hills and pale cliffs. The horses grow skittish. You tighten your grip on the reins and keep your eyes peeled. You see smoke in the distance. Not thin chimney smoke, thick, dark plumes curling against the twilight. Your heart sinks. You crest the next hill and see what's left of a yam station: scorched beams, caved roof, the skeletal remains of a wagon still smoldering in the ash. No bodies, no noise, just the hiss of wind moving through what used to be shelter. Historians still argue whether these burnings were caused by bandits, rival tribes, or simple accidents. Some records blame lightning. Others hint at more deliberate destruction, messages too sensitive, packages too valuable. Whatever the case, you now have a choice: camp here in the ruins, or push forward into the dark. You opt for forward. Mostly because sleeping next to a burnt-out hut feels like asking for ghost problems. The stars come out slowly, one by one, and the moon lights the path in silvery streaks. You ride in silence. No fire tonight. No soup. Just you, your horse, and a dark stretch of land that feels ancient and haunted. Eventually, you find a dip in the land that offers some shelter from the wind. You slide from the saddle, stiff and silent, and collapse into the grass. You lie there, motionless, listening to the quiet. The horse breathes. A cricket chirps. Your stomach rumbles. You eat the last of your emergency curds. They taste like despair and calcium. And then, without warning, sleep arrives. Heavy, dreamless, absolute. You wake up with a beetle in your hair. Not a metaphor. A literal beetle. It looks at you. You look at it. You both agree this is not ideal. You flick it away gently, no need to offend the local fauna, and sit up. The dawn light is soft, painting the grass in shades of gold. Your back cracks like a haunted xylophone. The horse is still here, bless its shaggy, loyal heart, chewing patiently on a bush that's 90% thorns. You saddle up and ride east. Today is drier, windier, and somehow dustier than you thought possible. It's as if every loose speck of earth in Central Asia has conspired to enter your nostrils. Your teeth feel gritty. Your eyebrows feel exfoliated. You start to question whether human skin is even designed for this climate. Mainstream historical fact: Genghis Khan's communication system relied on speed and resilience above all else. The couriers, called Ortoon riders, couldn't afford luxuries like weather-related excuses. Dust storms? Keep riding. Rain? Ride faster. Wild dogs? Just try to be less interesting to them. By midday, you spot a small herd of camels in the distance. Wild, slow-moving, and staring at you with the profound disdain of creatures who have definitely seen too much. One of them sneezes in your general direction. You sneeze back. It feels like diplomacy. A few miles later, you pass a cluster of zhuz, round felt tents used by nomadic families. You think about stopping, maybe asking for some water or even a story, but something in the quiet stillness of the place holds you back. The wind shifts, and the entire camp seems to sigh. You ride on. The land starts rising, gentle at first, then steeper. Rocks give way to boulders, grass to gravel. You find yourself climbing higher and higher, until you realize you're threading your way through a narrow mountain pass. Your horse isn't thrilled. You aren't either. Your thighs are writing a strongly worded letter to your future self about decisions and consequences. Then you hear it, a low, rhythmic rumble. It's not thunder. It's a caravan. You turn a bend and suddenly you're face to face with a column of traders, yaks laden with cloth bundles, camels draped in colorful saddles, and a few sleepy-eyed men in fur-trimmed hats squinting at you like you might be a mirage. You wave. They wave back. One of them offers you a handful of dried apricots. You accept as if you've just been handed gold. Quirky tidbit: dried fruit was a staple of Mongol travel kits. Not just for nutrition, but for its mystical reputation. Some believed certain fruits could ward off illness or bad spirits. You're not sure about the spirits, but the apricots do wonders for your morale. You ride alongside the caravan for a while, exchanging pleasantries through gestures and the occasional loanword. They ask where you're headed. You gesture vaguely east, shrug, and mime exhaustion. They nod. Deeply. Knowingly. Historians still argue whether caravans helped or hindered the efficiency of the yam system. Some think their predictable routes provided shelter and information for couriers. Others claim they clogged the paths and attracted unwanted attention. You're just grateful for the company and the fruit. Eventually, you part ways, and the pass opens into a wide plateau, windblown and white with chalky soil. The sky stretches above you, impossibly vast, and for a moment, you forget your hunger, your fatigue, your everything. You feel awe. Then your horse sneezes, startling both of you. You chuckle. It sounds foreign in your dust-choked throat. Ahead lies your next relay station, just a speck at the far end of the plateau. You nudge the horse forward, already daydreaming about a wooden mat, a smoky fire, and perhaps, just perhaps, a ladle of mystery soup that doesn't taste like fermented shoe. You're not sure anymore what day it is, or how far you've traveled, but you're still riding. And that's more than most people could say. You're starting to wonder if the saddle has fused with your skeleton. The thought drifts across your mind sometime around hour 6 of today's ride, as the wind whips your cloak into a sort of theatrical flag behind you and the sun casts everything in that blinding, white-hot glow that makes it hard to tell whether you're riding across a plateau or inside a frying pan. There are no landmarks here. Just dirt, sky, and the occasional pile of horse dung that reminds you someone passed this way before. Maybe yesterday. Maybe last month. Time on the steppe is flexible. Your next station isn't a hut this time, it's a cave. Well, technically it's a rock outcrop with some walls stacked against the wind and a blackened fire pit that suggests shelter in the most generous possible terms. But it counts. The station keeper greets you with a grunt, then points to the pile of kindling like it's your turn to cook. Mainstream historical fact: not all relay posts were full-service stops. In more remote areas, the stations were maintained by local families or even left unattended, stocked only with fodder and firewood. Riders were expected to fend for themselves, cook, feed the horses, boil their water if they were lucky enough to find any. You drop your pack, stretch your legs, they protest loudly, and squat next to the fire pit. There's a small bag of millet tucked under a rock. You shake some into your bowl, add a splash of whatever's left in your flask, and set it over the flames. It's technically porridge. More technically, it's warm goo that tastes like nothing and feels like victory. As you eat, you notice a set of strange markings on the cave wall. They're old, worn by weather, scratched shallowly into the stone. Circles, horses, arrows. One might even be a sun. It looks like a child's drawing or a warning. Hard to tell. Quirky tidbit: some Mongol stations doubled as shamanic waypoints, places where travelers left signs or offerings for protection. Bones arranged in patterns. Stones stacked in tiny cairns. Even horse skulls, placed deliberately to watch the paths and keep malevolent spirits at bay. You leave a pebble on the rock shelf, just in case. No sense offending the local metaphysics. Night falls fast. You curl up next to your horse, who is deeply unimpressed by your snoring. The cold creeps in slowly, through your boots, your spine, your dreams. At some point, you think you hear singing. You sit up. Nothing. Just wind, whispering across the plateau, slipping into the cave like a rumor. You lie back down, blanket clutched tight, trying to recall the words to any song you ever learned as a child. All you get is that weird one about the ant and the rubber tree plant. It'll have to do. Historians still argue whether Mongol couriers suffered more from bandit attacks or from sheer psychological strain, days of isolation, sudden bursts of adrenaline, then more endless, silent riding. It's easy to imagine ghosts out here. Even easier to talk to them. In the morning, you rise with the sun, or maybe just ahead of it, jolted awake by your bladder and the strange ache in your neck from using a still bag as a pillow. You boil some more millet. The station keeper is still asleep, snoring into a fur cloak. You quietly leave a chunk of dried meat beside his mat as thanks. And then, it's time to ride. Your horse seems to understand without prompting. It stands, stretches, and looks at you like, really? Again? Yes. Again. You climb back into the saddle, stiff and squinting, and set off toward the eastern horizon. Your next delivery is waiting. Somewhere out there, a warlord's message or a tax scroll or a love letter on goat-hide parchment is traveling faster because of you. That counts for something. Right? Even if your thighs disagree. The next stretch is deceptively peaceful. No storms. No bandits. No beetles in your hair. Just a cool breeze, some squawking crows, and a herd of shaggy sheep that part around your horse like your Moses of the Mongolian lowlands. You start to let your guard down. Mistake. Because now you're entering forest. Not a fairy tale forest. A real one, dense, damp, confusingly vertical, with trees that lean just a little too close together, like they are whispering secrets about you. You duck to avoid a low branch and immediately get slapped in the face by a wet fern. Welcome to nature's punchline. Mainstream historical fact. Though most of the Mongol Empire's route stretched across open steppe, certain yam segments wound through forested terrain, especially in what's now northern Mongolia, southern Siberia, and parts of the Altai Mountains. These zones were slower, riskier, and significantly more mosquito-forward. You push forward anyway. The light fades fast under the canopy. It smells like pine sap, wet fur, and that specific musty funk of mushrooms that are definitely plotting something. The forest path isn't exactly a road, more of a suggestion. You follow hoofprints and broken branches, hoping whoever left them wasn't lost or eaten. And that's when you hear it, a low grunt. You freeze. Your horse freezes. Then, crashing through the underbrush like a very angry wardrobe, comes a boar. A large one. With tusks. It stares at you like it's wondering whether you're edible. You're not brave. You're just extremely committed to surviving. You dig your heels in. Your horse rears. The boar snorts and charges, but veers off at the last second, crashing into a thicket with a series of grumbles that sound suspiciously like curse words. Quirky tidbit: boars were both feared and admired by Mongol hunters. Killing one without a bow was considered a sign of either extreme skill or extreme stupidity. You opt for neither. You ride faster. Eventually, you break out of the trees into a misty valley. The sun is somewhere overhead, filtered through cloud and fog. Your legs are shaking. Your horse is foaming. Your heart is trying to punch its way out of your ribs. You dismount, walk in circles, then lie down in the grass like a dramatic Victorian character recovering from a spell. After a while, your stomach growls. Loudly. You rummage through your bag. You've got about half a dried turnip, a piece of something that might have been meat a few days ago, and a strip of leather you consider chewing just to feel something. You eat the turnip. It tastes like old optimism. Historians still argue whether Mongol couriers had assigned rations, or if they simply scrounged their way across the empire with whatever was at hand. Some sources suggest supply lists, others point out that, given the speed and range of the routes, improvisation was probably the rule, not the exception. You consider this as you gnaw thoughtfully on your last crust of bread. You don't feel like a national asset, but technically, you are. You saddle up again and continue through the valley. The mist clings to your boots. Somewhere in the distance, you hear wolves. You don't look back. Instead, you hum a little tune. Not because you're brave, but because it's either that or scream into the fog, and one of those is less sleep-friendly. By evening, the land opens up again. Another station appears, just a low hut next to a willow tree, smoke curling from the chimney like a sleepy sigh. Inside, a young woman offers you a bowl of something hot and brothy. You don't ask what's in it. You drink. It's divine. She speaks little, but points out a sleeping mat. You thank her, collapse face first onto the floor, and melt into a deep, dreamless slumber, one arm still draped across your still bag like it might run off without you. Outside, the fog lifts. The wolves wander elsewhere. And you sleep like someone who's truly earned it. The next morning, you wake up to the sound of soup. Not birdsong. Not hooves. Just bubbling soup. Turns out, it's a good sound to wake to. Comforting. Nourishing. Way better than yesterday's snorting boar alarm. Your host is already up, stirring the pot and humming a tune that sounds like it's half lullaby, half weather report. You thank her with the most heartfelt bow your aching back can manage. She hands you a small cloth bundle, flatbread, a twist of salt, and something that might be cheese or a very cooperative rock. You mount your horse, wave goodbye, and ride east once again. Today the terrain changes. The soil turns redder, the grass taller. You spot cranes wading in a marsh. They watch you pass like museum guards, graceful, suspicious, and clearly unimpressed by your dusty cloak and lopsided still bag. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol Empire's reach wasn't just across barren plains, it extended into river valleys, wetlands, and even semi-jungle terrain in parts of what's now China. These areas required adaptation, different routes, local guides, and sometimes, different horses better suited for soggy or mountainous conditions. You follow a wooden causeway for a while, marveling at the engineering. The planks creak beneath your horse's hooves, but hold. Every few hundred feet, you see markers, faded symbols burned into wood, some with what look like foxtails tied to them. You're pretty sure it's not decorative. You pass a man fishing with a bird. Yes, with a bird. He wears a conical hat, his bare feet dangling in the river. A cormorant perches on a pole beside him, occasionally diving into the water with lethal grace. The man glances at you, nods once, then returns to his work like riders fly past every Tuesday. Quirky tidbit: cormorant fishing was a traditional practice in parts of East Asia and is still performed ceremonially today. Though not standard in Mongol courier routes, it's likely that riders passing through these regions would have seen, and perhaps even relied on, locals practicing it to find fish, trade, or simply learn the lay of the land. You pause to watch the bird work. There's something hypnotic about it, how swiftly it dives, how it returns to the perch, dripping and triumphant. The man slips a tiny fish into its beak as reward. You consider asking if he rents the bird out, but the vibe is very no questions, just fish. Eventually, the wetlands give way to rice fields. Tiny canals crisscross the landscape, and you spend most of the afternoon avoiding soggy tumbles. Your horse is deeply skeptical of the narrow embankments but manages. At one point, you almost topple into a flooded paddy, but save yourself by grabbing a bamboo stalk like some kind of accidental acrobat. You hear laughter. A farmer is watching you from across the field, mouth hidden behind one hand. You bow theatrically, and they clap. A brief moment of fame. Historians still argue whether Mongol relay riders in southern provinces received cultural briefings or training before being sent into unfamiliar terrain. Some suggest riders were purely logistical instruments, point A to B, no questions asked. Others argue they needed to blend in, learn basic customs, even pick up a few local phrases to survive in these regions. You lean toward the latter. After all, how else would you have known that hand signal from the farmer meant path is that way, not that way, you're about to ruin someone's week? By dusk, you reach a relay station tucked beneath a cluster of flowering trees. The scent of blossoms drifts on the air, sweet, earthy, a little intoxicating. You dismount and take a long breath. Even your horse sighs. The station here is better kept, sturdy walls, carved beams, a small shrine by the door. Someone hands you tea before you've even asked. You're not sure what you did to deserve this level of hospitality, but you're not asking questions. You sip the tea. It tastes like ginger, smoke, and salvation. The station master, an elderly man with eyebrows like sleeping caterpillars, listens quietly as you recount your route. He says nothing, but nods deeply at the end, then taps the scroll pouch at your belt with a knowing look. You feel seen. Weirdly heroic. You sleep inside tonight. On an actual mat. With a blanket. It's the height of luxury. Outside, frogs croak in the rice canals. Somewhere, the cormorant man hums to his bird. And you, in your woolen socks and dust-lined hair, fall asleep smiling. You wake up to rain. Not a drizzle. Not a gentle mist. A full-throated, operatic downpour, like the sky has decided to audition for percussion section soloist. Your first thought, at least the roof held. Your second thought, you left your stole bag outside. You bolt out the door and find your bag propped neatly under the eaves, perfectly dry. The station master is sipping tea nearby, gazing out into the storm like it's just another Tuesday. Which, technically, it is. You bow your thanks. He raises an eyebrow like, "Please, this isn't my first courier." You're given a fresh oilskin cloak before you leave. It smells like pine tar and horsehair, and you love it instantly. Then, back on the road. The path is slick, half mud and half ambition. Your horse picks its way carefully, each hoofstep a minor miracle of balance. Water rushes down the hillsides, cutting new rivulets that weren't there yesterday. You start humming again. Something about ducks and rain boots. It helps. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol couriers rode in all weather, all seasons. The yam system was designed to function year-round, rain or shine, and riders were expected to push through storms, snow, and floods, though alternate routes might be used if river crossings became too dangerous. You pass a small wooden bridge half submerged in rising water. Your horse refuses to cross. You squint. Fair enough. You detour upstream and find a fallen tree forming a makeshift crossing. It's mossy, narrow, and one side dips disturbingly into the current, but you talk your horse through it like a hostage negotiator. By some miracle, you make it across. You both need a moment. You share an apple. It's bruised and soggy, but feels like a feast. Quirky tidbit. It's rumored that some riders developed whistle signals just for their horses, specific tones that meant slow, eat, brace for splash, or no, seriously, don't you dare bolt again. Though no written record of this survives, oral traditions in some regions preserve these patterns in lullabies and work chants. By midday, the rain tapers into a mist. The land changes again. low hills now, and terrace slopes with stone fences. You spot goats with what look like haircuts. Like actual styles. One has a side part. You blink. Turns out you've wandered into a wool-producing region, and the goats here are prized like models. There's even a woman brushing one with what looks suspiciously like her own comb. She waves. You wave back, then realize you're dripping wet and covered in mud. You wave again, apologetically. She gestures toward a small fire pit and a jug of something steaming beside it. You approach cautiously. She pours you a ladle of warm milk, goat, presumably, and offers a biscuit the size of your hand. You don't ask what it's made of. You just eat it. It's crumbly and mildly cheesy. You briefly consider proposing. Historians still argue whether Mongol riders frequently accepted food from strangers. Some sources insist riders were discouraged from stopping for too long to prevent delays, while others suggest hospitality, especially in rural areas, was both common and expected, with locals proud to assist the imperial mail network. You finish the milk, thank her profusely, and promise your horse you'll clean their hooves later. The horse does not believe you. You ride on, the terrain softening again. The mud has dried into cracked mosaic patterns, and the wind smells less like thunder and more like warm hay. By the time you see the next station, your legs are jelly. You dismount like a bag of laundry falling off a chair and sort of roll into the yard. No one judges you. You spend the evening drying your socks by the fire and watching two dogs argue over a cabbage. It's peaceful. Weird, but peaceful. That night, you sleep beneath a woven quilt someone hands you without a word. You feel human again. Mostly. Outside, the last drops of rain hit the roof like whispers. Inside, your scroll pouch lies dry and untouched by the hearth. Your mission continues tomorrow. But tonight? Tonight, you rest. By dawn, the roads have hardened into rutted tracks, and the sky finally resembles something vaguely optimistic, pale blue, streaked with high clouds, the kind that look like they were painted by someone using only their fingertips. You eat something that might be barley porridge and might be reconstituted wallpaper paste, and you don't ask which. It's warm. It stays down. You're good. Then back in the saddle. Today's journey takes you through Canyonland. The hills rise into abrupt, coppery cliffs, striated with layers of sediment that look like someone sliced into time itself. Wind whistles through the rock in long, mournful notes, like a flute player trying to summon ghosts. Your horse is jittery. You try to whistle along with the wind, but your lips are too dry and your tune too off-key. Mainstream historical fact. The Yam roads included mountain passes and dry canyons in what's now Central Asia and Western China. Riders had to navigate treacherous switchbacks and narrow defiles, especially when traveling along Silk Route-adjacent corridors. Natural wind tunnels were common, and occasionally so loud they could drown out conversation. You pass a rock spire that looks suspiciously like a crumbling tower. Probably natural, you tell yourself. Definitely not cursed. Your map, really more of a list of vague directional notes, says to follow the left fork. Or maybe the fork before the left fork. It's unclear. You choose based on vibes. An hour later, you realize your vibes were wrong. You're somewhere completely unfamiliar. No markers, no hoof prints, no other travelers. Just you, your horse, and a deeply opinionated lizard who's been sunning itself on a boulder for what appears to be 900 years. You pause to reevaluate your life choices. Then you spot it, a stack of stones, artfully balanced, clearly intentional. You dismount and inspect it. Quirky tidbit, cairns and ovus, ritual stone heaps, were common along Mongolian routes. While some marked borders or sacred spots, others served practical purposes, path markers, wind shelters, or even directional codes left by previous riders. According to some oral traditions, stacking a new stone on top was a way of saying I passed through, all was well. You add a stone of your own, carefully, reverently. The lizard seems unimpressed. Not long after, you find the real path again. It winds upward, then abruptly opens to a vast overlook. You rein in your horse and stare. Below you sprawls a town, small, but bustling. A patchwork of rooftops, courtyards, smoke trails, and colorful awnings. Oxen trundle along paths, vendors shout about dumplings, children chase chickens with the chaotic joy of small, invincible beings. It feels alive. And a little like civilization, for the first time in days. Historians still argue whether Mongol couriers were allowed extended rests in market towns. Some evidence suggests they could pause to exchange goods or attend local festivals. Others claim stops were strictly timed and enforced. Most agree, however, that towns played key roles in informal intelligence gathering along the Yam routes. You descend into town slowly, trying to look official. Dusty, sunburned, and probably smelling like boiled goat, but official. You find a stable, trade a token for a feed bag and some hot water, and park yourself on a bench near the main square. Music drifts on the wind, someone playing a two-stringed moinkur with casual brilliance. It sounds like riding fast across open land, like distant thunder, like homesickness. You don't cry. You do stare into your cup of fermented mare's milk for a long time and think about cheese. A boy wanders past and offers you something wrapped in a leaf. You take it, cautiously unwrap it, and discover a sticky ball of honeyed rice and nuts. You make a noise that's halfway between a sigh and a religious chant. The boy grins. You give him your last smooth stone in thanks. He seems delighted. You could stay here. Just for a day. Rest. Eat more of those sticky things. Wash your socks properly. But no. You've got a scroll to deliver. You've got a horse who's finally eating again. You've got a job. So, after one more cup of mare's milk and a very intense staring contest with a nearby goat, you saddle up and ride. The path ahead glows in the late afternoon sun. The cliffs watch you leave like old sentries. And the town slowly fades behind you, swallowed by dust and distance. You ride through golden hour. The light stretches long and low across the landscape, making everything look more poetic than it has any right to. Even your filthy boots look kind of majestic, as if they've been through noble hardship and not just horse drool and yesterday's rice pudding spill. You pass into open grasslands again, smooth as silk, rippling in waves beneath the wind. The path is clearer here, worn by hooves and time. Birds call overhead, and for the first time in a while, you feel something close to confident. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol couriers traveled vast distances across the Eurasian steppe, where the open terrain allowed for impressive speeds. Some estimates suggest up to 200 miles per day using relay stations and fresh horses. These open regions were vital arteries of communication and control during the height of the empire. Of course, wide open plains also mean wide open targets. You spot movement on the horizon, dust, maybe riders. You slow, unsure if they're fellow couriers or something less friendly. You wait behind a rise, peeking just enough to see 3 mounted figures passing by, heading west. You catch a glimpse of the official courier sash, bright red, fluttering at one rider's shoulder. You exhale. They don't see you. Or, more accurately, they do, but choose not to interrupt your journey. There's a quiet etiquette among couriers, eyes meet, heads nod, and then you each vanish into your own separate stories. You continue east. Quirky tidbit, courier routes weren't just practical, they were weirdly theatrical. Some riders were known to whistle distinct melodies as they approached stations, signaling their presence. Others reportedly developed rider names that became folklore in their own right, like the wind on hooves or sleeps while galloping. It's impossible to verify, but let's be honest, you kind of want a rider name now. You think about yours. Falls off trees? Mud in boots? Scroll but no socks? something elegant, clearly. The sun dips lower, and you begin scanning for the next station. Your map says it's near a salt flat, but maps on this journey have mostly been decorative suggestions. Then you smell it. Salt, dry earth, and something tangy on the wind. The flat appears like a mirage, white, cracked, glittering under the fading light. Hoofprints lead to a lone hut near the edge. A weather-worn sign outside reads something probably inspirational or possibly insulting. You can't read it. You nod respectfully anyway. The station keeper is a woman in her 60s with sun-dark skin, a half-missing eyebrow, and the energy of someone who has seen things. She doesn't talk much. Just points to where the horses are kept, hands you a slab of something that tastes like salty beef and herbs, and gestures at a sleeping mat with her chin. You like her instantly. Historians still argue whether the yam relay system involved women in key roles. While most official records focus on male riders and military couriers, archaeological evidence and regional oral histories point to women as station keepers, horse breeders, and even riders themselves, especially in areas where survival required all hands on deck. You eat. You stretch. You change your socks. It feels like a full spa day. Later, you sit just outside the hut and watch the stars come out. No candles, no fire, just that pure, velvet dark sky pricked with impossible constellations. You try to trace familiar shapes: a spoon, a sleeping goat, the face of your horse. Your horse sneezes nearby in what sounds like objection. Fair enough. You think about the journey so far: mud, dumplings, blisters, cormorants, mysterious biscuits, and realize you're actually proud. Tired. Possibly riddled with fleas. But proud. You're part of something ancient now, something stretched across continents and centuries. A rider on the road. A scroll in your bag. A story in motion. You close your eyes, lean back against your stolbag, and let the breeze wash over you like a lullaby. Tomorrow will bring new terrain. Tonight, the salt wind sings you to sleep. You wake with the sunrise. There's a moment of disorientation. Was that a dream? Did you really cross 1,000 miles in a single night? Or did you merely nap under the stars and lose track of time? You shake the sleep from your bones and stretch, sore in places you didn't know could be sore. Your horse looks at you like it knows you've been abusing its trust, and you silently promise to be better, maybe a proper hoof cleaning later. Maybe not. You pack your things with practiced ease. The salty breeze from the night before is now a warm kiss on your face. The station keeper, still, somehow, an enigma of gruff wisdom, waves you off with a simple nod, the same kind of farewell that's been shared by countless riders before you. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol couriers often had to make their way across vast salt flats and dry, barren landscapes. Salt was vital for trade, but these regions also proved treacherous, as dehydration and exhaustion could set in quickly. Sometimes, the couriers were forced to carry extra water or travel with specialized containers to preserve supplies during long stretches of nothingness. You start along the next leg of the journey. The ground beneath you is dry and cracked, but the scenery is hypnotic, vast and empty, broken only by a few weather-beaten scrub trees. The wind picks up again, swaying the few bits of vegetation that still dare to grow. You're feeling good now. It's an easy pace, no hills to climb or rivers to ford. Just the quiet stretch of earth and sky, and the steady rhythm of hooves beneath you. But you're also cautious. The flat, featureless land has a way of making you feel like you're always being watched. The wind cuts across your skin in ways that leave you with a constant sense of unease, as though you've wandered into the middle of a great expanse and the whole thing is waiting to swallow you up. Quirky tidbit: the Mongols weren't the only ones who traveled these lands. Ancient trade caravans, long before the rise of the Mongol Empire, made their way across these very same salt flats, connecting east to west through the Silk Roads. Some of their routes, long forgotten by history, are now nothing more than faint tracks in the sand, reminders of traders, explorers, and dreamers who once braved the same emptiness you now traverse. As the morning wears on, you pass a few more stations, simple structures, tucked out of sight in depressions of the land, barely visible unless you know exactly where to look. Each one seems a little more deserted than the last, the walls slowly falling to the inevitable erosion of time. The feel of the journey has shifted, like you're crossing the boundary of one world into another. You can't shake the sensation that you're being drawn toward something, a destination you can't quite see yet. The road eventually narrows into a valley. The sun is high now, hot, but the air feels dry and crisp. You realize with a jolt that you've crossed into new territory, a place that doesn't feel quite as familiar as the endless steppe you've just left behind. The valley opens up to a town that looks different. You've arrived at a city that appears ancient and untouched, almost as if it's been frozen in time. Low, adobe buildings cluster together, some with domed roofs, others with strange, intricate carvings on their walls. There are no bustling market stalls, no cries of merchants. Just the quiet hum of a place that seems to be holding its breath. It's almost too quiet. You slow your horse as you pass the first few buildings, and then, there it is. A towering monument. A statue of a horse, or perhaps a rider, though time and weather have weathered the details so thoroughly that you can barely make out the features. But it stands proudly in the center of the town square, a stark reminder of a past long gone. Historians still argue whether this city was ever part of the Mongol postal system, or if it was just a local stronghold on the periphery of the empire. The general consensus is that such places, often out of the way and somewhat forgotten, were left to their own devices, serving as rest stops for travelers, merchants, and couriers who took the longer, less traveled routes. Yet, it's impossible to know for sure. Some speculate that these outposts housed secret messages or were centers for local intelligence, important, but never quite part of the core network. You tie your horse to a nearby post and dismount. Your back creaks in protest, and your joints remind you that you've been on horseback far too long. You stretch as you step into the town. The air smells of spices, dried herbs, and age. It's not unpleasant, but it's certainly different. The people are sparse, their faces lined with generations of hard work under the sun. There's a quietness to them, as though they are aware of something you can't quite put your finger on. A group of children stare at you from an alley, but they don't approach. Instead, they follow your every move with silent curiosity. You wonder if they've ever seen a Mongol courier before. You feel like a wanderer here, a ghost from another time, passing through a place that's almost forgotten. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey pressing down. The salt flats, the mountains, the endless steppe, they all seem like distant memories now. And the scroll? It feels almost irrelevant in this strange, unbroken world. For a moment, you contemplate leaving it here, just walking away. But then you remember why you're here, and you realize there's still one more stop to make. Tomorrow, you'll move on. But for now, the quiet hum of this ancient place is enough. The town feels timeless, like you've wandered into a scene pulled from an ancient dream. Its cobbled streets, cracked and worn, echo with the sound of your footsteps, but there's no rush here. No urgency. It's a place where time seems to stretch in a way that would drive anyone with a tight schedule mad. You wander through the narrow streets, past stoic, weathered homes, and old stone fountains, still running though they look like they could crumble at any moment. The air feels still, heavy with dust, and yet, there's a peculiar sense of peace about it. As though the world outside has forgotten this place, leaving it to quietly carry on without interference. You pause near a small courtyard, where a woman is sitting, spinning yarn in the shade of an arched doorway. She watches you with quiet interest but doesn't speak. You can't decide if she's waiting for you to speak first, or if she's content to leave the conversation in your hands. It's a look you've come to recognize over the last few days, the silent, watchful gaze of someone who's learned to trust their instincts over words. Mainstream historical fact: quiet, isolated towns like this one were critical to the flow of goods and information along the Silk Road. While the bustling trade centers were essential for commerce, these smaller, quieter settlements served as points of rest, refuge, and sometimes covert meeting spots for those looking to exchange ideas or intelligence away from prying eyes. You look around, taking in the sights and smells. The quiet. The air, thick with the scent of dried herbs and wood smoke. In the distance, you can hear the soft clink of metal, someone hammering iron, maybe. The faint murmur of conversation, though it seems to come from all directions and none at all. You sit on a nearby bench, taking out the scroll you've been carrying for what feels like forever. It feels heavier now, more like an anchor than the vital message you had hoped it would be. You turn it over in your hands, feeling the ancient papyrus beneath your fingers, the ink faded but still legible. You realize you could stay here. You could stop. Put everything down and let the world forget you for a while. Maybe the scroll will keep. Maybe it won't. You almost think about it, the ease of abandoning the mission for a day, a week. The simplicity of the quiet, the peace that feels so foreign now. But then you remember the next station. The next town. The next leg of the journey. You're so close now. You can feel it. Quirky tidbit: along the Silk Road, a courier's dedication to delivering a message wasn't just professional, it was almost sacred. Riders and their scrolls were often treated with reverence, as though they carried the fate of the world in their hands. It said that some couriers were given guardian status, protected by both local governments and religious figures, ensuring their safety across dangerous terrain. Whether this was more superstition than fact is anyone's guess. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey. You stand, stretch your stiff limbs, and fold the scroll back into its protective leather casing. A sudden gust of wind picks up, ruffling your cloak, tugging at the edges of your thoughts. There's something about this place that makes you want to linger, to remain just a little longer, bask in the warmth of silence, the stillness of time. But it's time to move on. The wind tugs again, as though reminding you that there's always more to be done, more to be seen, more roads to travel. You approach the woman spinning yarn, offering a smile and a nod. She doesn't smile back, but her eyes soften, as if she understands the weight of the decision you've made. Without a word, she hands you a small bundle, probably a piece of dried fruit, or a ration of some sort. You take it, surprised at the quiet gesture of kindness. A traveler's gift, perhaps. Or just an act of care in a world that could always use a little more of it. You mount your horse, your muscles protesting but your resolve firm. The town fades behind you, the last of its towering buildings shrinking into the horizon. And ahead, you see the road, dusty, endless, and full of promise. There's still a scroll to deliver. There's still more to see. The journey isn't over yet. And as the sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the land, you can't help but feel that, just for a moment, you've been part of something much larger than yourself. A journey that stretches back centuries, and stretches forward into eternity. You smile softly to yourself as the road unspools before you, stretching out like the memory of something beautiful. Oh, you feel the weight of the road beneath you once more as you ride into the open air. It's quiet again, that familiar silence of the long trek, the world feeling infinitely wide and unknowable. The sun is now a fierce ball of fire in the sky, a harsh reminder of just how unforgiving this land can be. The heat wraps around you, pressing down, making your cloak feel heavier than it really is. The landscape is barren now, nothing but flat plains and distant mountains, their peaks just barely visible, like dark fingers reaching up into the heavens. Mainstream historical fact: in the time of the Mongol Empire, the landscape you're crossing wasn't merely a backdrop, it was part of the empire's power. The Mongol Empire thrived in the vastness of the steppe, where mobility, speed, and control over the environment were key. Their cavalry could cover incredible distances in a day, thanks to their unparalleled knowledge of the land and a highly efficient system of communication and supply, which allowed them to stay connected across vast territories. But for you, it's just a desert now. Endless and sprawling, the vastness is disorienting. It's hard to tell where the earth ends and the sky begins. As you ride, the wind picks up once more, kicking up dust and sand in swirling clouds. You pull your cloak tighter, trying to shield your face. The terrain is becoming more challenging. The ground beneath your horse's hooves is dry, cracked, and uneven. Every step feels like it might be the one that sends you tumbling into a ravine or a hidden pit. You're beginning to question whether you'll find another station soon, or if the map, suspiciously quiet on this stretch, has simply let you down again. The feeling that you might be lost gnaws at you, but you press forward. You've been lost before. You've kept going when there was no choice but to push ahead. Quirky tidbit: the Mongol couriers, though expert in navigating vast and difficult landscapes, were notorious for sometimes going off course, too. The need for speed often meant their maps were more like suggestions, subject to the whims of the environment. In fact, one historian argued that Mongol messengers were sometimes more reliant on intuition and natural landmarks, such as the position of the sun, specific types of trees, or even particular rock formations, than on any formal map. A glint of light catches your eye in the distance, and for a moment, you think it's a mirage. But then you blink, and there it is again, clearer now, and unmistakably a cluster of buildings, tiny from where you're standing, but buildings nonetheless. A town, maybe, or a way station. You urge your horse forward, urging it faster despite your exhaustion. You can almost taste the relief of a roof, even if it's just for a few hours. You ride toward the town, and as you get closer, you notice something odd. There's no movement in the streets, no sound. It's eerily still, as though the town is waiting for something. You slow your pace as you near the gates, feeling a deep unease begin to settle in your chest. There's something about this place that feels off, like it's been abandoned for a long time, long enough for the world to forget it entirely. As you pass through the gates, the silence is palpable. The buildings are old, crumbling, covered in vines and dust. You hear the creak of something in the wind, but you can't place it. No people. No animals. Just the occasional rattle of something blowing in the wind. You dismount and approach the nearest building. The door is ajar, but you hesitate before stepping inside. There's a peculiar, almost overwhelming sense of history here, as though you've crossed into a place that time itself has forgotten. Historians still argue whether places like this were once bustling towns, important hubs of trade or communication along ancient routes, only to be swallowed by the sands of time. Some say that such places were abandoned after they became too remote or too vulnerable to attacks. Others believe they were deliberately left behind, their inhabitants moving on to new, more prosperous locations. The mystery of these forgotten towns continues to intrigue archaeologists today. You step inside, the wooden floor creaking beneath your feet. The air smells musty and stale, the scent of something old and unused. But there's also something oddly beautiful about the decay, about the way the light filters through the broken windows, casting strange, shifting shadows on the floor. As you wander through the quiet rooms, you find remnants of life. A rusted metal bucket in the corner, a dried-up plant hanging in a window frame, a piece of cloth that might have once been a curtain, now tattered and hanging in tatters. You almost expect to hear someone's voice, calling you, telling you to leave. But there's no sound, just the endless echo of your own movements. And then, just when you think this place is completely empty, you find it, a small, wooden box tucked away in a corner. It's weathered, like everything else here, but it's surprisingly intact. You open it carefully, your fingers brushing the old wood. Inside is a single object, a tarnished silver coin, its design worn away by time. You pick it up, turning it over in your fingers, feeling the cold metal against your skin. You don't know what it means. But for a moment, you can't shake the feeling that this coin is connected to the town in some way. Maybe it's a relic from the past, a forgotten symbol of something important. Maybe it's just a coin. But then again, maybe it's not. You slip the coin into your pocket, a strange weight suddenly attached to your journey. You look around once more, absorbing the quiet, the emptiness, before stepping back into the sunlight. You step back into the sunlight, the heat immediately warming your skin after the cool darkness of the abandoned town. For a moment, you stand still, feeling the soft tug of the wind against your face. The empty town behind you, the dust swirling around your feet, feels as though it is closing in on itself, slowly sinking back into the earth, its presence erased by time. The coin in your pocket feels heavier now, its significance growing with every step you take away from the forgotten place. What did it mean? Why had it called to you, among all the things you could have found in that strange, abandoned town? Maybe you'll never know, but the thought lingers, a whisper of mystery in your mind. You return to your horse, the journey ahead still long and winding, but there's a strange peace settling over you. You'll keep moving forward. You always do. There's always more to be seen, another road to travel, a new chapter to turn. Mainstream historical fact: the Mongol Empire, despite its vastness and military might, was not solely defined by conquest. The empire's true strength came from its ability to connect the unconnected, bringing trade, culture, and ideas from one end of the world to another. It was an empire built on communication, a system that allowed goods, knowledge, and even people to travel vast distances across previously inaccessible lands. As you resume your ride, the familiar rhythm of hooves beneath you is a comforting sound, grounding you back to the present. The hills and plains stretch out before you, but the road feels different now, as though something has shifted. Perhaps it's the quiet hum of history in your mind, the knowledge that you're retracing paths once trod by those before you. Paths that were once vital to the flow of civilization. There's something soothing about the thought, the knowledge that you're part of this long, endless thread. You are not alone in this journey. You are one in a long line of wanderers, explorers, messengers, who've crossed these lands before. The sun begins to dip lower in the sky, casting golden light over the landscape, and the road ahead seems endless, stretching forward into the horizon. As you continue on, you find yourself reflecting on the journey, the strange towns, the lost history, the quiet moments that pass like fleeting dreams. Every step you take brings you closer to your destination, but it also brings you closer to the realization that the journey itself is just as important as the destination. For now, you let the silence envelop you, the rhythm of the road, the soft hum of the wind, and the steady cadence of your horse's hooves. Everything else fades into the background, and you realize that this peace, this quiet, this moment, is exactly what you needed. Historians still argue whether the most important thing about journeys like yours was the destination or the journey itself. Some say that the story of the Mongols and other empires built on trade and communication is one of growth and progress, of linking disparate lands together. But others point to the moments in between, the stretches of road, the quiet towns, the long hours of travel, as where the true story is told. Where the weight of history is carried, not by a destination, but by the movement itself. For you, the answer is clear. It's the journey. The setting sun casts long shadows behind you, and you can feel the peace settle around you like a warm, familiar blanket. The world is vast, but it is yours to explore. And as the road stretches ahead, you know that whatever you find, wherever you end up, it will always be the journey that stays with you. And so, as you ride off into the coming twilight, the sound of the world fades into the distance. And, for tonight, that's enough.